Good evening, everyone. My name is Kazi Anik Ahmed. Gonna rewrite my name to fix it. My N number is N1546057, and today I'll be doing homework number 4, problem 1.8.22. This is a problem where we have been given 8 frequency responses that align to a certain zero and pole diagram with zeros and poles, and so we're given 8 graphs, in total 16 graphs, but we're asked to not use any computational method or even MATLAB to generate anything, but use more for reasoning and intuition. So a lot of these matchings are done with intuitions from what we have learned before, from the classes we have taken before, from our experiences. So I'm going to try my best to kind of articulate and explain as much as I possibly can. So for the first one, what I've done is here I've kind of like drawn out all the frequency responses, and I've made an arrow which kind of corresponds to that frequency response matches. It's for the certain pole diagram. So for the first one, we have frequency response where we kind of have 2 spikes. They're kind of spread apart and kind of shifted, and they're not that sharp, or rather steep. And this zero is in the middle, and I've decided that I've reasoned that this matches with 0 and pole response 5 that we've been given, because we have 2 zeros, which is right there, and the poles kind of characterizes your frequency response. The poles are very close to the 0, and they are conjugates of each other, which is why you have 2 spikes, but they are not that steep because they're close to the 0. Now for the second one, we have a frequency response kind of similar from the first one, but it dips all the way to the 0, and they're very steep. And here we have 2 zeros, one on the unit circle and one in the middle, and there are 2 poles just like this one, but instead of being close to the 0, which is the center, they're very close to the unit circle, so almost close to being unstable, which is why you have this big sharp and jump and dip all the way. Then the third frequency response is a very classic frequency response, slow curve, kind of like an inverse cosine graph, where we have the 0, which is in the middle, and we only have one pole, which is on your this axis, but it's kind of in the middle of 0 and the unit circle, which is why you have more of a inverse cosine curve, and it's also more of a little bit tame as opposed to being more erratic or sharp. For the frequency response 4, we have this, which kind of looks like inverse W, but it doesn't see the center, doesn't touch the 0, and there are 2 spikes, meaning there are 2 poles, just like what we expected, and there are 2 zeros in the middle, and the poles, what they say that they're going to be 2 spikes, just like what we have, but they're kind of shifted apart, which is what we have. Sorry. Frequency response 5. So for this one, it's kind of like that, you can say, but a bit more dip, much more dip, and more wide apart. And the reason is that we have 2 zeros, just like the first one, but here, frequency response 5, it corresponds to 0.2, because the 2 poles are very steep. They're very all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom, which is why you have the big dip and 2 large sharp spikes. Frequency response 6 is, if you look back, it's similar to response 3. Here you have a bit more of a quicker dip. The reason is one pole is on the unit circle, and 1 0 is on the unit circle, and the pole is close to the unit circle, but they're very similar. frequency response 7, here you have almost looks like an unstable response, which is what you have dip curve, which just goes all the way sinks to the 0 and it spikes back up. This erratic response is because the 0 is on actually the unit circle and the pole is very close to the unit circle. Because of the 0 is touching the unit circle, which is why you have this kind of becomes goes all the way to the, or rather touches the 0. And frequency response 8, which is also a very classic frequency response graph, but it's a bit more thinner on the top. The reason being that you have the 0 in the middle, which is why it's not touching the 0 here, just like that one, but the pole is close to the unit circle, so which is why you have a sharp or steep on the top. That's pretty much all the frequency responses with their corresponding 0 and pole diagram. Thank you for listening. See you next time.